our last speaker for this morning, who's Dan Lundberg, who's going to talk about more market. Please note that the title is slightly changed from the program you have in your hands, and the title is actually Market, Media and Folk Music.
Thank you very much. Oh, I mainly have to stand here. Is that correct? Yes. First of all, it's very nice to be here. It's been a dream, I think, for all my life, almost all my life, to go to Tbilisi. So I feel very good being here. I will speak about something similar, but at the same time, maybe not that similar. I've been this paper springs out of a long-lasting interest for folk music in advertisement. That I've been collecting clips, I've been collecting films and stuff like that, and also been collecting the discussions that they many times arise in Sweden. So in a way, this is maybe a very Swedish, maybe introvert observation about how things work with this. And I will try to connect the notions of folk music with Michael Goldhaber's attention economy concept, and see how we can think about folk music used in media for advertisement. And of course today we are quite used to folk music being used in TV commercials. In Sweden, butter or cream is very often marketed with pictures of cows in a rural setting and a nyckelharpa around. We know that IKEA is using folk music to market themselves abroad, but never in Sweden. That's also interesting. But this, I will start with this that I wrote in the abstract about the Arla, the Swedish milk and dairy products producer. They used for the Olympic Games in Sochi 2014. It was a TV commercial featuring Thomas Wassberg, one of Sweden's most famous skiers, with several Olympic gold medals to his name. And in the film, Wassberg was skiing along a mountain track, stops for a moment on a sunny slope, takes out a milk packet from his rucksack, gulping down milk straight from the packet. This is not problematic, but it was. In Sweden, there was a lot of debate on the internet, on the Facebook groups, and very many people were very much almost abused by this use of folk music. I will show. Actually, they took away. So the videos actually changed, maybe as a result of this debate. So the skier, Thomas Wassberg, is no longer drinking from the packet. It's somebody else is doing it. And, well, you can see. Oh. Go back. How do I?
His mouse was there. Yeah.
That's all. The reactions were harsh and immediate. So we can see comments like this. What a pity that this polska is used for something as bloody awful as commercial for semi-skimmed milk. And the semi-skimmed is also something that is taken up in other comments. It was a lot of comments. You know, folk music is real. Semi-skimmed milk is artificial. There were other comments, of course, going in other directions. I think that this is about a problematic view of folk music. I would say that the Swedish concept of folk music is very narrow. it goes back to the 18th century ideas, or maybe 19th century ideas on what is folk music, and it was really formatted in the beginning of the 20th century by the collectors. And that means that our concept of folk music is much more narrow than most others. There were also, of course, other comments that was trying to make this feel better for some people. I'm using here also the article "The Good, the Bad and the Folk" by Richard Collin. I've used it a lot of times. Collin's point is that folk music in many layers has its own aesthetics and a value system based on the genre's connection to history and society. And of course this goes together with what you said, Anda, and others also here. So, and of course we can disagree on almost every of these points of Collin's. That of course this is a very old, obsolete perspective or the understanding of what folk music is. In the old peasant community, folk music was possibly an integral part of the local culture. Today's folk music is more largely produced and performed on the stage by educated musicians, as opposing to this. And I would maybe say in many cases pop music is probably the more pure oral culture that we have today, more than folk music. But anyway, Collin has a point, and this is that lies in the ideas what folk music is, rather than what is actually created and performed. So over the last few decades, folk music genres has become increasingly detached from environment and all that, but we still think of them in that way. Okay, so I said something about Swedish collecting and ideology. 1908 something was created that sounds very much as it would have come from East Europe or something, the Folk Music Commission. The Folk Music Commission, they started to collect what was supposed to be the real Swedish folk music. And the threat was not classical music, not that kind, but the popular music. And the popular music at that time was polkas, Scottish, we call dance music, that was very popular and was really played everywhere. The accordion had made its entrance and was used for this music. But these people that created the Folk Music Commission, they thought that this was really a threat to the real, now authentic folk music. So they started a very big collecting work. And it had some implications. First of all, who gets in focus? The oldest fiddlers, mostly fiddlers, men got in focus. This is contradictory to what was done the century before. In the 1700s and the 1800s, the collecting work was mostly women actually, because they were text-oriented and song-oriented. Not mostly women, but equally, I would say. So this changed this. It also changed into focus on regions, and certain forms became canonized. Polska dance, three-beat Polska, and other older waltz types and so on. So it had some influence, and still it's also like when thinking about archives, this is what we have in the archive. So when folk musicians today look for folk music, what can they find? Of course, the things that are in the archive. So it had a very, very big influence. Anyway, to go on, advertised or commercial TV is a quite new phenomenon in Sweden. Before 1991, the state-owned Swedish radio had exclusive right to broadcast television and radio in Sweden. But at that time, a necessary, I would say, change came because it was a consequence of satellite TV stations, so we already had commercial TV, you could say, because you could watch it. something that could tell us a little bit about the view on commercial music is the reception of ABBA after they won the Eurovision competition in Brighton, 1974. There was a very big debate in Sweden. In a debate article, 8 young Swedish composers and professors questioned the appropriateness of giving a prestigious musical award to ABBA, quotation, a group that makes a fortune by manipulating our financially strong teenagers. The tone of the article was typical of the critique. They had a lot of critique. Today, ABBA is seen as gods. Everybody loves them. But at that time, they stood for this commercial turn in music. And they were a threat. Then if we turn to attention economy. Economy, of course, if we start there, is when a value occurs, when two parties agree on a value or a price on the transacted goods or services. Then in the 80s, early 80s, Michael Goldhaber started to think about what about information? Information could be also one of these, maybe a third value. But he soon thought that it's not information that is scarce. People who already have attention can direct. So what he was thinking that what we see today with Google and all that, this was 10 years before internet. But he was thinking about how new technologies would provide us with information. And the problem would be to find information more than that it was there. So then he thought that the value could be then in attention. This is not very hard to understand. But so that is when attention economy. He was after that the information technologist. I don't know if that's the term. Thomas Davenport, American. He developed these ideas in the early 2000s. And here's a quote from him. The problem for business people lie on both sides of the attention equation. How to get and hold the attention of consumers, stockholders, potential employees, and the like, and how to parcel out their own attention in the face of overwhelming options. People and companies that do this succeed, the rest fail. Understanding and managing attention is now the single most important determinant of business success. Welcome to the attention economy. And what they both say is that this puts people that have attention, musicians, athletes, and so on, in a very good position to redirect attention. I was looking, this is from my collection. This is a very famous key fiddler, nyckelharpa player, Erik Sahlström. And this is an ad for coffee. And you could see that it's very genuine. It would taste very based in the folk tradition. Here's another one, accordion. This man was known for hating accordions. He was a musicologist writing articles against the use of accordions. And then he turned up in this ad. Both of these are very popular now. They are posters that you could buy. Then some things that failed. This is the telecom company that tried to sell more telephones. This is from a resort, a ski resort in Sweden. I called them and asked if I said, these are wonderful, could you send me these posters? And they did. And they had to take them down because they also caused a lot of discussions about sexism and you know, exoticizing everything. And I think they're marvelous. But okay, if we are talking about attention, this could go the other direction also. Because if you are an artist, this is the place where you can perform. The internet is very important, and to get attention is important not only for others but also for artists. So if you go and do a commercial for a very well-known company, then you would, as an artist, get also attention. And this is what happened with Frida Örn. She did this commercial for Saab, and what happened was that her career really started. She was a singer in a country and western bluegrass band in Sweden, and she was asked to sing this song on a Saab commercial. You know, the automobile Saab. It doesn't exist anymore, but it did. So Frida did this, and it was a break for her, even internationally.
I am a growing force without emotion. A glass of water longing for the ocean. I am the fire burning desperately, but you're controlling me. Release me. Release me.
Yeah, so she started to tour in Europe with this song, and others also, because of her connection to the Saab ad. Attention once again. I have also one more. I need to show you this. It was a lot of discussion about this in Sweden. Zlatan Ibrahimovic, the football player, that made this Volvo commercial for I don't know what model, but some. And I don't know why he did it. He didn't need the money, but the story is that he went to Volvo and said, I want to do a Volvo ad for you. Maybe to prove himself to be a true Swede. This is something very important around this, because he was born in maybe in Bosnia, but he grew up in suburb to Malmö in south of Sweden, very poor and very problematic area. And then he became sort of an icon for Swedes. And so this is also a statement. I, from Bosnia, could be the Swedish Viking or something, because he's, you know, out in the nature, bathing in ice water and doing all that. That's Vikings did. Maybe. Not. This is the Swedish national anthem, which is a folk.
Du tysta, du glädjerika sköna. Jag hälsar dig, vännaste land på jord. Din sol, din himmel, dina ängder gröna.
Very romantic picture of Sweden as fantastic nature, and you know, and our glorious history and all.
Flög över jorden. Jag vet att du är och du blir vad du var. Jag vill leva, jag vill dö i Sverige.
Yeah, and he also changed the text in the national anthem. And what he did was that he added Sweden, because Sweden is not in our national anthem. It's the North, because of the situation. When this song was The text was written in the 1800s when Sweden and Norway had a union, so it wasn't appropriate at that time to mention Sweden. I think that the Polish national anthem is the only national anthem mentioning Sweden, isn't it true?
Yes.
So I was, I had a call from the Swedish radio and in the program, and they asked me, do you think that we will change the text now after Zlatan has signed Sweden? And of course we didn't. But many times during the history this has been, people have tried to do that. Anyway, I tried to go back. And what's the problem? There are many things. I'm now referring to the first video, the Sochi thing with the milk, of course. There is a basic skepticism still living, and that stems from the old thinking about folk music and how it should be connected and how it should be authentic or in that way. Also goes back to our very narrow definition of folk music. This is changing, I would say, in the last years, but I think it's important to know. Also that many of the comments that I read seeks for this natural connection between music and goods that are sold, and the demand for authenticity, whatever that is. And this is a quote from Goldhaber, and tells us to be a little bit, to watch out, to see what we're doing with the attention that we have. This is what happened with Anders Peer, the musician that played in the first video. His career didn't go this way because he was really thought of as somebody who did wrong. But I think it's worth thinking about, and I think that Goldhaber's ideas about the attention economy is quite good to use when we are thinking about media and music. So, this is it.
Thanks a lot, Dan. And before we move to the question, I cannot resist telling you that in the late 80s, early 90s, in Italy, the typical car ad in Italy was a car driving in Sweden, but you had to be in the daylight with the green. So I was quite amused to see that what you showed it was quite different. But I think your paper brings up potentially quite a lot of issues and topics. And any questions, any comments? Joseph first, please.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Very interesting indeed. Can we say that basically the attitude towards ads and towards the new things is that it's a non-acceptance?
Excuse me?
Can you generalize and say that the general attitude towards the new things that appear, like ABBA, you know, at the beginning it was not accepted, that at the beginning it's always non-acceptance of some things that we have not been doing a few years ago. It's starting now, we don't like it. After a few years, we might like it. Or are there any examples that prove that no, there have been some new developments and they have been liked from the very beginning?
Yes, of course, there are many new developments that are liked. I think this, in a way, you could talk about cultural and economics here, that there is this tension all the time between cultural values and economic values that are growing, and you could also say that things that last, that keeps being there, that are not thrown out, like ABBA, for instance. After a certain amount of time, they are turned into cultural heritage in a way. And today, I think they are treated. We have the ABBA Museum in Stockholm, so this is changing. But in the 70s, they were not cultural heritage.
Thank you.
A short remark. Can you hear me? So the narrow definition of folk music it is of course widespread, maybe more popular than in academic discourse. Sometimes it depends, of course, of the country of the time. But when the term folk music was coined the first time by Jakob Stelin in 1778, he defined it as the music of the common people in villages and towns. So there was no, and when Friedrich David Gläder did the first theoretical concept of folk music research in 1792, he worked basically of the music of the different social groups in the towns. So they obviously were much more open-minded than in the Romantic period of the 19th century.
Yes, I think you're right in referring to Anda's paper before. We also have a jury in Sweden. You can play as a folk musician. To become national folk musician, you have to be approved. And this, there's an ongoing debate, for instance, about instruments. You're supposed now, you could play on accordions actually, but not 5-row accordions. And you could absolutely not play saxophone or something like that. You have to stick to nyckelharpas and fiddles and flutes. But it's changing, but it's, I think maybe it's 100 years after or something like that.
Thank you very much. One last question and yeah, we go.
Thank you so much. It was really interesting for me to see how in Swedish commercials folk music appears and how is it accepted by the society there. Because in my master thesis I was actually writing about how Georgian folk music is used in the society right now, today, and in different kind of occupations. So one of them was commercials. And we can say that in Georgia, there is a quite, there are lots of examples of that, and from 90s actually already started this kind of commercials. And in, I can say 100% feedback from the society is extremely positive. Whatever content is there, however folklore is used there, the fact that folk music is in the commercial, it's always positively accepted here. I don't know.
I think that you should also know that this is not every Swede who is concerned about this. I would say that the majority is on the same line as you are saying now. This is the folk music community that are reacting. A small, quite conservative group of people that react. Most people would maybe not even notice that it's folk music.
In this sense, I think that ethnomusicologists react positively to that in Georgia, because in commercials, most of them, they tried to use original layer of folk music, so-called authentic folk music. So it was like acceptable for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I would like to thank all our speakers once again.